All right. Looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is John, and welcome to this live stream of the Minecraft novels that we're going to read today. You've probably noticed already, this is one of the books we'll be reading. We'll be reading a couple of chapters for it. As I said, this is one book, and here's the other book. This one is called Minecraft: The Lost Journals, whereas this one is called Minecraft: The End. I should probably put this on mute. Sorry about that. Oh, I just realized something else that should be put off. Let's see. Forgive me for this latent thing. There we go. Now then, like I said, I want to thank you all for attending this thing. It's very nice of you to be here today. And here, let me just make sure everything is on screen. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I still don't know how my hair ends up like that. Oh, right. As you can see, I wore my Steve shirt. He's confused by the existence of round objects. And I also have my my Minecraft University jacket. Yeah, right here. So anyway, I hope you're all doing very well. You know, we're just gonna settle in for a little bit. You know, that'd be cool. Ah, hey, Killer Pro. Nice to see you again. Hey, never mind, it's not important. Oh, you're leaving so soon? Well, anyway, here I just gotta put something up. Yeah, put this right here. I'm just putting OBS on top of the live stream window so I can see myself and the contents of what I have under here. And yeah, this should be good. I'm very happy for those of you who are watching this or are watching this after the fact. Either way, I appreciate it. So this one is called, as I said before, Minecraft: The Lost Journals. So let's go to the first page right here. Wait, there's something on my screen. Oh, sorry. No, stop that. Ugh. The Lost Journals by Mur Lafferty. Yeah, the audio level should be good, right? Oh, shoot, I can't believe I almost forgot about that. Sound. Focusrite. And yeah, the input's good too. Here, I'm just gonna leave this open for a little bit, and I'm gonna put on my headphones. All right. Oh, wait, I gotta turn on direct monitoring because I can't hear myself at the moment. Oh, okay, yeah, it's on. It's on. So anyway, as I said before, this is Minecraft: The Lost Journals by Mur Lafferty. For Fiona, Blaze, Alex, and all the turtles. From the Lost Journal of... Today, I nurse the considerable burns I received when encountering and I barely made it out alive. It was a yellow monstrosity, a cube surrounded by... I foolishly thought that my shirt would be good enough, thinking that this was just a scouting mission. The promise of strong and other riches are too tempting to ignore. But wool armor is not a thing that visits, despite what insisted. My shirt protected me from nothing. I'll have to tell that they were wasting their time, and I'm sorry for the lost wool and the lost sheep. I did find something of interest, but it was guarded by those fire things. I will have to get more data before I face them again. Now to sneak to the village to see if someone with a trade will trade a healing potion with me. I hope I don't run across... I couldn't face them right now. Hang on, I need to check my settings. Configure video. I feel like the focus is off a little bit. Hang on a sec. Can I control it with the keys? Okay, I can control it too much with the keys. Okay. Yeah, I believe this is the only page. Yeah, this was the prologue right there. Forgot to mention that. Oh, look, there's more stuff right here. I think I have perfected building the portal. Almost nothing went wrong this time. I did have the problem of zombies on this side, and on the other side there were more of those terrible fire creatures. But hey, when life gives you mushrooms, you make mushroom soup. I made a small platform and brought a great deal of cobblestone through to build a safe area. I think I'm making progress. Why write things down if you don't intend anyone to read them? And yet I hope no one reads this. I've been attacked by more creatures on the other side, and barely escaped with my life. If I can't find a safe place to live there, I will certainly die, but living on this side is no longer an option. If you do find this journal, don't follow my lead. The danger is high and the risks are many. The only treasure I've gotten is a block of material that burns me when I touch it. Nothing valuable is on the other side. Right now, I seek only freedom. Part 1. Chapter 1. Might as well raise mushrooms. Orange and red heads bobbed up and down in the local cove, bleeding as they surfaced and gurgling when they sank. Allison shook her head. The sheep had gotten loose and gone straight for the water. Again. She crossed her arms and watched their fuzzy square heads appearing and disappearing in the water, showing no sign that they were considering coming to dry land anytime soon. What was it with these sheep? They wanted to be in the water more than any sheep she'd ever known. Her parents had bred the animals for their coloring, but as far as she knew, they hadn't tried to crossbreed with a squid. Speaking of squid, from the dark smudges in the water, the sheep had attracted some friends. The sun hung high in the sky, so Allison had time to wade in and get them. But she hated swimming after the little monsters. Wet wool was the worst smell. Fantastic, she muttered, pushing her sleeves up. She pulled some wheat from her pack and walked to the edge of the cove. "What's up?" came a voice over her shoulder. She jumped and whirled. Her best friend stood behind her, head locked. "Max," she shouted, "don't do that. I thought you were a creeper." He shrugged. Was I hissing? I just wanted to know what you were up to. He leaned to look around her. Oh, sheep swimming again? She was torn between pointing out the stupidly obvious and telling him to get away from the water. She decided on both. "Apple and Little Prince got out again. I'm getting them back." Max opened his mouth, but she continued hurriedly. "Alone, Max. Your mom will kill you if you go near the water again. And then she'll kill me, twice." He looked around with exaggerated focus, shielding his eyes from the sun with his hand. I don't see her anywhere, and I'm already near the water." He edged closer and dipped his toes in. Eyes squeezed shut. Then he opened them. "Did I die?" "Not yet," Allison said through gritted teeth. "Not yet," Allison said through gritted teeth. "Just let me get them out. Let me get them out of here. Just let me get them out of there. If you want to help, go check their pen or something. Figure out why they got out again." Max took another step into the water, watching the animals splash around. Allison had to admit, the sheep did look like they were having the time of their lives in the cove. A squid had definitely joined them, its tentacles waving in and out of the water alongside the sheep's brightly colored heads. "You know they like me better than you," he said. You need my help." That makes no difference. They'll come if I got food," Allison said, exasperated. "And no, they don't like you better." But they did. It really annoyed her that the red and orange line of her family's flock liked her best friend and ignored her. Today was no different. They must have thought Max was coming to play with them, because the moment he was up to his knees in the water, they bleated happily and began to swim toward him. He hadn't even tried to get their attention with wheat. "Max!" came a shout, and Allison winced. She didn't turn around. She knew that sound very well. Max's mom made it all the time. "Get out of the water right now!" She brushed by Allison without a word and ran into the water. Apple and Little Prince bleated in panic and turned to escape, eager to get away from the I can't say this word. Rampaging. Probably should have done some facial exercises beforehand. Splashing monster that bore down on Max. The squid dove into the deep. Max's mom paid no attention. Max had barely begun to protest when his mom grabbed him around the middle and muscled him back toward the beach. Max struggled. "Mom, it's okay. I'm not drowning. I wasn't going any deeper," he shouted. "Allison needed help with the sheep." "I will not risk losing you again," his mom said, tears already forming in her furious eyes. She dumped him on the sand and put her hands on her hips. "You won't lose me," Max said, but his last words were cut off with a grunt when his mom bent over and suddenly grabbed him again, wrapping him in a tight hug. "Did you forget I almost lost you already?" she repeated, ignoring his struggles. Allison looked away, embarrassed. In recent months, seeing others' family closeness, even the weird closeness Max had with his overprotective family, made her uncomfortable. "And Allison," Max's mom said, letting her son go and putting her hands on her hips again, "I thought you knew better." "Don't yell at Allie, Mom," Max said, stepping between them. "She told me not to go. I didn't listen." "She should still take care of you. She's older." "By less than a year," Max protested. "I'm 12. I don't need her to be my babysitter." "We will talk about this at dinner, you two," she said, then pointed at Max. "Don't go into the water again." Max sighed. "Yeah, okay, I'll go check the pens. Allie, I'll go check the pens. I'll go check the pens, Allie. I'll go check the pens, Allie, and be really careful not to go near any water on the way. I don't know what I'll do about my spit, though. It's pretty hard to avoid." He spat on the ground and then sprinted away from it, arms flailing in mock panic. "That's not funny," Max's mother called as she watched him go, tears dribbling down her face. "I don't want him near the water," she reminded Allison, as if she'd forgotten. "I know," Allison said. "I don't want to be near the water either. But the pen broke again, and I had to get the sheep back." Max's mom wiped her cheeks and took a deep breath. Composed, she looked at Allison, pity in her swollen eyes. "Why?" she asked gently. "Why what? Why do I need them back?" "Because they got out," Allison said, blinking at her. "Why did the pen break? I don't know, but I do know the sheep got out, and when that happens, you put them back in. My grandfather had a stupid saying about it, something like, 'When the sheep get out, might as well raise mushrooms.' Max's mom frowned. "That makes no sense. I mean, why worry about the sheep? They'll do fine if you let them go wild. You don't need to take care. You don't need to care for them anymore. We don't need the wool, and you don't need the responsibility. There's definitely no reason to keep breeding them, and fixing the pen just takes you back to your house over and over again. You could do without the memories, you know." She put a little emphasis on over and over, reminding Allison that going back to her destroyed house wasn't doing her any good. She patted Allison on the shoulder. "Think about it. I'll see you at dinner." Allison stared into the... Allison stared into the water to avoid watching her go. The pen had been a ways from the house, through a corpse of trees, and when she visited the sheep, she didn't actually see the ruined treehouse that she used to call home. She visited the pen often, trying to be responsible for the sheep. She felt she owed them that much. But Max's mom was right. They didn't need the wool anymore, and Allison was wasting time and materials with frequent repairs on the pens, and losing whole afternoons running after the lost flock. Then again, they were one of the few resources of joy in her life. She gazed out at the swimming sheep, who happily played with Squid, which had resurfaced and was playfully wrapping its tentacles around Apple. Little Prince was trying to headbutt the tentacles that got near him. Allison heard thumping steps behind her, and before she could turn around, Max was back, running past her toward the cove. With a whoop, he jumped into the shallow water, making the biggest splash he possibly could have, and waited with high galumphing steps toward the sheep, who greeted him with happy bleats. Allison laughed and waded out after him, waving the wheat over her head. Even with the threat of getting in trouble hanging over them, Max could always make her laugh and forget about her problems for a moment. Excuse me. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, yeah. Chapter 2. Allison's dad wasn't imaginative. Apple nibbled on the wheat Max offered as Allison surveyed his fix to the sheep pen. "Don't feed them too much," she warned, not looking around at him. They shouldn't breed right now. I definitely don't need any more lambs." Oh, come on. You want a baby apple, right? Max said, patting the sheep. Maybe make an orange? Not if Orange is going to be even more interested in escaping for an afternoon swim, she said. So, did you use my tools to fix the pen, or did you go another way? Max glanced up. She was frowning at the large, bulky objects he'd chosen to patch the sheep pen with. Oh, that. I just took some blocks and plugged the hole. I couldn't find any wood. I made this to fix the two high just in case Big Blue started jumping again. That was right, wasn't it? But she waved her hand in her face, at a loss for words. She looked around the clearing. Allison's family farm was outside the village, near Max's house, and their clearing was large, surrounded by tall trees. Her family's ruined treehouse lay around the bend, and Max noticed she always kept her back to that area, lest she remind herself it was there. You had plenty of wood. I gave you good tools, she said, waving her arms at the trees. But you just plugged the hole with... What is that? It's obsidian. Max knew she had never seen obsidian in real life. It was so rare. It was too rare, and their parents would never let them play around lava. Yeah, I'm gonna take off this dust jacket. It's making me nervous. By the way, this is pretty cool art, isn't it? Very detailed, and it's also embossed. You know, you can feel the textures on the cover. Hey, do you think if I were to tap this part of the portal enough, it'll break? Anywho, where was I? Oh yeah, she stared at him blankly, and then started firing questions at him. How is this a reasonable fix? It's not even a fence anymore. And where in the overworld did you get obsidian? And why would you waste obsidian on a sheep pen? If your mom finds out you've been messing with water and lava, she's going to kill me, I know, he interrupted, grinning at her. Mom will have to kill me lots of times if she finds out what I've been up to. Do you think she'll be madder about the water or the lava? There, he left her an opening. Ask about the blocks. Ask about where... There, he left her an opening. Ask about the blocks. Ask about where I've been. He waited for her to ask him more, but she just herded some of the sheep back into... She just herded some of the sheep back into the pen, while the other sheep, Big Blue, Old Blue, Light Blue, and It's Okay You're Gray, I Still Love You, or OK for short. And It's Okay You're Gray, I Still Love You, or OK for short. Watch them warily. Most sheep avoided the water and avoided those who didn't avoid the water. Apple and Lil Prince didn't care, though munching on grain and dripping water on the grass. Wait, I misread that. Apple and Lil Prince didn't care, though, munching on grain and dripping water on the grass. The air started to smell of wet wool. Allison took her shovel from her pack and began digging in front of her face. Max groaned. She was determined again. If you're bored, why don't you help me? She said, tossing him her shovel and retrieving another one. Dad always said moats were ugly, but I think it'll be the best way to keep them in the pen. Max took a moment to admire the craftsmanship of the shovel she had tossed him. When she wasn't fussing over sheep, Allison had been throwing herself into crafting, making better and better tools every day. She had begun to dabble in armor creation, but only when they found enough materials. There were rarely any There were rarely enough materials. He got to digging, moving around the fence in the opposite direction from Allison so that they met on the other side, each having dug a one-block trench. You going to fill it with water, or better yet, lava? Or better yet, lava? He said, grinning. Not today, she said, putting her tools away. The trench will work for now. She jumped out of it and sighed, dusting her hands off. She turned to him. Well, where did you find the blocks? I know you didn't mine them because you don't have a diamond pick. Yes, she is interested. Yes, she is interested. He chuckled in what he hoped was a clever and wicked manner. I'll tell you someday, and I was hoping you could make me a diamond pick. She began walking back toward Max's home. To mine obsidian, you have to have a diamond pick. You need diamond to make a diamond pick. So you have to find diamond and happen to have an iron pick. Which should be enchanted, I know, Max said, rolling his eyes. She had told him this before. He knew they'd make a great team. She could make the tools, and he could enchant them. But Allison, for some reason, always said that messing with enchantments was a bad idea. But, if you come across the means to make an iron pick, you could make one. That's all I'm saying. And that's another step toward mining our own obsidian. She had perked up when he'd hinted about having the resources necessary to make an iron pick. After a moment, she shook her head and laughed softly. I guess I'm predictable. Should I ask your mom to grab me some diamond when she goes for the village to see your dad next week? And then you can tell me where to find this obsidian that needs mining. I'll tell you later about the obsidian, he said. They were nearing his house, and if his mom overheard anything about mining or enchanting or doing anything else that seemed dangerous, like breathing the air outside of the house, she would have another fit. Max relaxed a little bit. He'd finally made Allison smile, a job he knew he'd had to throw more and more effort into lately. He couldn't blame her for her grief, though. A few months ago, his own family had gone through some uncomfortable changes, and it had taken a while to get used to it. On top of that, he never expected Allison would become essentially his adopted sister. You expected your friends to hang out, have adventures, run from zombies if you stay out too late. You don't expect them to come and live with you after a life-changing disaster like losing your home and family to an unexpected creeper attack. Max had been grateful for her joining the family when she had, though. A few weeks before her tragedy, he had nearly drowned swimming in the cove, and ever since then his mom had been smothering with her concern for him. She'd even built a shed in the backyard to store all of their liquids away from the house, which Max thought might be a bit of an overreaction, though he'd never say that to her. When Allison came to live with them, stunned and grieving, it gave Mom somewhere else to channel all her worry, and Max was able to recover in peace. The best and worst part had been that Mom saw Allison as an older sister / babysitter. Worst because, come on, Max didn't need a sitter, and best because he finally got to leave the house again with his best friend. He had gotten over his near-drowning incident, but Allison understandably still had moments of sadness over the loss of her family. Max tried her best to distract her in those times, like breaking the fence so the sheep would get out and she could have a solvable problem instead of the unanswerable storm of grief. He'd never tell her the fence was his fault, of course. She might get mad. When Allison had moved in, Max's mom, an architect, had welcomed her by building a tower connected to the back of their house for her to live in. It gave Allison a special place to retreat to when she needed alone time. And she was cooler and more elaborate than it was cooler and more elaborate than a plain old bathroom. Max had tried to hide his jealousy at the time. His parents had never thought to put their amazing architectural skills behind making him a unique space that was all his own. Then he remembered what Allison had gone through and why she might need her own haven, and he got over his angst. Sort of. After the adventure with the escaped sheep, and after a dinner where Max and Allison assured his mom that they and the sheep were just fine, he made sure his mom was asleep, and then crept to Allison's tower door. He knocked softly. Allison peeked out, coal smudged on her face. What? What are you crafting? He asked eagerly. Really do sound like I have an accent sometimes, don't I? I mean, I was born and raised in California, and you'd think I would have, gone over that by now. Can't talk today. Let's see. What are you crafting? He asked eagerly, immediately forgetting the reason he was visiting. Shh, come inside, she said. He gave a quick look behind him and then followed her to the staircase. Instead of up the stairs, she went to a door she had placed in the wall under the stairs and opened it. It led straight into the hillside behind Max's house. He and Allison had regularly been clearing out the area to make a secret crafting fort. The fort had a crafting table that he had made for her soon after she'd moved in. She'd been pretty listless and unhappy, and Max had finally told her to distract his mother for 15 minutes. Allison asked something about the skill of building in midair, something his mom excelled at, and as she talked, Max had snuck out of the shed to use his mom's crafting table. He'd presented the new crafting table and a few basic tools to Allison later that night, and she had smiled for the first time since moving in with them. Sorry, evidently that was cardboard I was rubbing up against. I mean, the book was rubbing against the cardboard, not me. What? Hold on, my software is acting a little strange right now. Bear with me. Okay, yeah, that's a bit better. I need a drink. So, yeah, from then on, she had something to focus on, something to do rather than wander around, grieving. They had immediately started collecting wood and stone and seeing what they could do with it. And one day they'd built their own workshop in the hidden cave they dug beneath the tower. Since then, Allison had gotten quite good at crafting, repairing, and upgrading items. Tonight, Max saw that their workshop was cluttered with a number of new items. Where is it? Fudge, I lost my place. The last word was items, I know that much. New items. Allison had been busy since dinner. New shovels, axes, pickaxes, fishing poles, and buckets sat on the table. She picked up one shiny pickaxe and handed it to him proudly. I found some iron, she said. Now go find some diamonds so I can make you a diamond pickaxe. You wouldn't mining for iron without me? He demanded. Why would you do that? His face lost its happiness, and she glared at him. To surprise you with a new pickaxe, you ungrateful dummy. She turned her back to him and started to put the tools away in the chest by the crafting table. His outrage deflated. Thanks, he mumbled. Eager to change the topic, he went over to the chest where they typically stored their materials. So, what else did you find? She didn't answer right away, so he opened the chest and stared at the contents. She had managed to find iron, sand, and coal in her excursion, but hadn't hit any of the choice blocks he'd only heard of. No. Here, I'm going to say that sentence again. That kind of sucked. She had managed to find iron, sand, and coal in her excursion. What? She had managed to find iron, sand, and coal in her She had managed to find iron, sand, and coal in her excursion, but hadn't hit any of the choice blocks he only heard of veteran miners finding: gold, emerald, diamond, and lapis lazuli. You should go replace your mom's tools with the new stuff while she's asleep, Allison said, still not looking at him. They'd secretly been upgrading Max's mom's tools and replacing the broken ones. It gave them a place to put all the extra stuff Allison was crafting just to get more experience. He'd clearly struck a nerve, but wasn't sure what he had done. Hey, Allie, I'm sorry. It's just fun to go mining with you, that's all. I don't like missing out. She rubbed a hand over her face the way she remembered her mother doing and turned to him again. I know, but... She swallowed, then continued. My dad used to get mad and say that I wasn't grateful for the things he did for me. I thought he was being mean. Now I know how he feels. Felt, I mean. And I can't apologize to him. Shame flooded Max, making his ears burn. He looked at his grief-stricken friend, stuttered out an apology, took the offered tools, and left her alone with her tears, which only shamed him more. Why couldn't he just be grateful for the gift she'd given him? He was good at distraction, like letting out the sheep and giving presents, but he knew sometimes Allison needed him to just listen when she was feeling raw and unhappy, and that was the hardest thing for him to do. Okay. Just a second. Well, I've been on for 40 minutes already. Guess time flies. Bring this up. Okay. Chapter 3. When life gives you lava, make lava juice. It was weird to see both sides of the argument, Allison mused. Allison mused that night. She remembered the sting when her father had snapped at her, but now she understood what it was to do something nice for someone and have them toss it aside like yesterday's pork chops. She couldn't sleep, so she got out of bed and watched a skeleton wander around the clearing down below her window. She went downstairs. Here, I'm gonna put it down just a tiny bit lower. Yeah, I'd say that's good, right? Yeah, I gotta center myself a bit more. Hang on. Where was I? Oh, yeah. It was weird to see both sides of the argument. Allison mused that night. She remembered the sting when her father had snapped at her, but now she understood what it was to do something nice for someone and have them toss it aside like yesterday's pork chops. She couldn't sleep, so she got out of bed and watched a skeleton wander around the clearing down below her window. She went downstairs to the workroom and checked her supplies. She had just enough iron left to make a pickaxe for herself, so now she and Max could mine that much faster together. She pulled out a map. She had been painstakingly drawing. She had placed the house and the tower against the hill and estimated the hill's total volume. She found veins of coal and iron and walked where she had discovered each. And though she thought that if she went west under Max's mom's pumpkin farm, they might find some better blocks. She hadn't shown the map to Max yet, but might tomorrow. If they made up, that is. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to hit the camera like that. The pickaxe lay on the workbench, strong and well made. Allison stroked it for a moment, proud of her craftsmanship. She had never really felt that being a sheep rancher or tailor was her calling, as much as she loved the fuzzy nuisances, but crafting these tools, felt right. Max's mom hadn't noticed yet that they had been secretly replacing her worn tools with Allison's upgrades, or she hadn't said anything anyway. And Max's mom wasn't someone who held anything back. Allison admired that even when most of what Max's mom said had to do with overprotecting Max. There were far too many times Allison didn't say what she thought, and even months after the accident, you'd think I wouldn't care what I said to people. What was she afraid of? She'd already lost nearly everything, but the answer was obvious. All she had left was Max's friendship and his family's hospitality, and she couldn't bear losing that. Sorry, my back was itchy. What the heck is this? Sorry, I just noticed that there are markings on my book right here. You think that could have been from the printer or something? Anywho. The next morning, Max's mom said their favorite words. "I'm going to the village to see your dad today. Don't leave the house." Max's family had an odd setup, with his mom in the house working on her architectural designs and his dad staying in town for the last few months to manage a huge building project there. When Allison had asked about it, Max's mom had gotten taut around the eyes and said he had to take on extra work, then changed the subject. It felt like she was hiding something from Allison. Max didn't like to talk about why his parents were working and living apart either, dodging the subject when Allison had asked about it. And she wondered why they'd all become so tight-lipped and somber. Max's family used to be a large, happy, boisterous group, often coming over to Allison's house for large dinners. They would sometimes bring Max's aunts and uncles, as his uncles Nicholas and Maximilian and Aunt Hordy also lived in the area. The times Uncle Nicholas came over, Grandma Dia would complain and fight with him, and they'd contradict each other. But her mother always said the families were very close, not in spite of the older generation's bickering, but because of it. Allison didn't understand that at all, but she missed those times. She obviously didn't know all the details of Max's current home life, but she wasn't going to push Max if he didn't want to talk about it. Allison knew expressing his feelings wasn't Max's strong suit, so she would wait until he was ready. Until then, they had adventures to go on. Are you going to be okay going by yourself? Allison asked Max's mom. Max's mom smiled, puzzled. Of course, I go alone every trip when Max is in school. Allison dropped her eyes. I know, it's just, there are dangerous mobs out there. Ah, Max's mom said. I see. Well, you don't need to worry about me, dear. I can handle myself just fine out there. And besides, I'll be back before nightfall. She gave Allison's arm a pat, and then went back to preparing for her trip. Allison pushed down the fear that was roiling in her stomach over the thought of Max's mom being on the road alone. Sorry, I thought I saw something. She'll be back before nightfall, Allison repeated to herself. Everything will be fine. As Max's mom bustled around the kitchen collecting supplies for her half-day journey to the village, Allison's and Max's eyes met across the table, instantly forgiving each other and making their usual plans without speaking. A few weeks back, they'd already decided that if they mined the hillside behind the house, that wasn't technically leaving the house. They were just excavating an area. That they could turn into more rooms for Allison's tower, right? She will totally buy it, Max had said confidently, but Allison wasn't so sure. Still, the call of more crafting samples was too strong to ignore. They helped his mom pack up their donkey. No. Sorry. That was weird. Forgive me. Just checking something. You ever get those annoying news updates on your phone? I do. They helped his mom pack up their donkey Francine with several tubes of blueprints and some food for the road, then waved her off with a promise to stay inside. To stay, quote-unquote, inside. His mom stopped briefly to check the growth of her pumpkins. Max's mom Max's mom often spoke of how well her garden had grown this year, but she was disappointed that the gourds weren't quite ready to sell at the market yet. She bent down and patted one fondly, assuring it that she'd take it down. I cannot say this sentence. She bent down and patted one. I can't read this part. She bent down and patted one fondly, assuring it that she'd take it to town next time. Max rolled his eyes at this. Allison knew he hated pumpkins and all the dishes that had them as an ingredient. But it wasn't a vegetable Allison had eaten much of, so she still enjoyed the family's pumpkin dishes. Max's mom straightened and frowned at the dense. Oh, I think. Wait a minute, did I say corpse like at the beginning of the book? I think I may have. Sorry, I'm just checking this. I guess I shouldn't worry about it now. The copse? What's a copse? Let me look it up. Copse definition. Copse? That's weird. A small group of trees. Okay, so basically it's a small group of trees. You know, kind of like a murder of crows, for example. Which is weird, isn't it? A murder of crows? Let's see. Max's mom straightened and frowned at the dense copse of trees that had grown between the garden and the hill behind the house. "We need to trim these back when I get home," she said, "but wait for me. Don't do it yourself." And then she was off. "Be careful," Allison called after her. "Finally," Max said as his mom headed off down the path, leading Francine. "She's gone." He raced down the hall to his room and returned with a couple of torches and his new pickaxe. I've been working on a map, Allison said, and pulled it out of her pocket. Here's where we've dug so far. I'm thinking this might be a good place to go. She moved her hand to the top below the pumpkin patch. I think if we go a few blocks deeper than we've already been searching, we might find better stuff. "Let's go," he said, heading for the door. "Hang on, what if we find something nasty down there?" Allison asked. She always asked this, because she knew that finding a cave full of zombies and skeletons was more likely than finding a vein of gold this close to the surface. "We run," he suggested with a grin. He always did. Allison mined like an ant. Max mined like a grasshopper. She did it methodically and carefully, and Max dug wherever he felt like. Allison always worked in a grid pattern, moving forward for 16 blocks, over for 2, and then down for 16. Whenever she decided to go deeper, she did so carefully, creating a sloping passage and never digging straight down. Every time she traversed these paths, she thought about making some stairs. And then at night, when her legs weren't aching with the effort of jumping up on blocks, she figured it would be a waste of time and resources. Max just dug. When they had first started excavating, Allison immediately had to stop him from digging straight down, pointing out that he didn't know what kind of cavern he might fall into, reminding him that if he fell, getting back up would be tough. Max then had to show off that he had perfected the art of jumping and placing a block underneath himself to slowly build a pillar and rise within the hole he dug. Allison's older sister, Dextra, had used that procedure once, and then probably fallen off and needed medical attention. Seeing the technique again was so upsetting that she had spent the rest of the day not talking to Max. Or so she had planned, and then she saw the sculpture of a sheep he'd made out of blocks of red wool outside her window. The statue had a silly face that surprisingly looked very much like her sheep Apple. And now Max didn't dig straight down anymore. Inside the hill, Allison checked her map by the light of the torch, ensconced in the wall. We need to dig in that direction to get under the farm, she said, and Max started picking away at every block ahead of them, tunneling a large hole in the hill. She had sighed and stepped a few blocks down, and then began digging her next grid. Max snaked his tunnel in and out, messing up her grid and calling out joyfully whenever he found something that wasn't stone or dirt. Allison worked carefully, gritting her teeth and continuing her regimented excavation, marking her map. At the end of this, she would have to go through Max's haphazard mess and try to include that on her map. She was still digging and thinking about her map when 3 things happened at once. 1. Max shouted that he'd gone too far and opened up a spot in the hill high above the pumpkin patch. Allison was vaguely aware of the daylight coming in and turned around to see what he was doing. 2. Her iron pickaxe efficiently laid waste to the sandstone in front of her, and she mined without thinking. While looking over her shoulder, she opened her mouth to yell at him to plug that hole so his mom wouldn't see what they'd been digging. But he was overcome by heat and red light in front of her. She shielded her eyes and stumbled back, her eyes stinging from the pain. 3. An arrow twanged into the wall on her right. The cave that she'd opened was apparently full of lava, and at least one skeleton armed with a bow. Two more arrows followed the first one. Okay, definitely more than one skeleton, she amended. She scrambled backward, even as Max was calling her name again. Allie, did you hear me? I found the pumpkin patch. We're just above it. Lava began to leak from the cave while more arrows bounced off the wall behind her. Skeletons began walking toward her, avoiding the lava but clearly intent on punishing Allison for breaking into their home uninvited. Allison got to her feet. She spared one final glance at the advancing mob of skeletons, and then turned and barreled toward Max. He didn't have a chance to ask questions before she grabbed him by the arm and fled through the hole he'd created. weird how there's this space right here. Like, it's really weird. Maybe she won't notice, Max said, looking below them. Max said, looking below them. From their safe perch atop a tree in the Sand of Oaks, Max's mom wanted to cut down. They looked across the pumpkin patch. Skeletons, at least 20, patrolled the farm in the safety of the shaded area. They avoided the center of the patch, which now was nothing but a smoking pool of lava that smelled vaguely of burnt pumpkin pie. They wandered directly under Max and Allison, the only good news being they couldn't see the kids through the branches. The only way for her to not notice is if you almost drown again, Allison suggested, sitting with her knees up to her chin. Then we can make that happen? Max glared at her. I'm not the one who opened the room to the lava and skeletons and fire and pain. And why didn't you just plug the hole? You're carrying enough blocks, aren't you? See how fast you think when you're dodging arrows and streaming lava, she countered. I was just trying to get away. Face it, Allie, you opened the way to that cavern, and now Mom's pumpkin patch is destroyed. Max said. You opened the hole in the hill. You opened the hole in the hill, she countered, but there wasn't a lot of strength in her words. She was torn between rage at Max and fear that he was right. What would happen when his mom got home? Would she ground Max and kick Allison out? How could she ruin her host's trust in her so much? I need to zoom out a little bit. That's a bit better, wouldn't you say? We could get rid of the skeletons before she gets home, Max said thoughtfully. Then we would only have the lava to deal with. Fight skeletons in lava. You can't even fight a sheep, Allison said. Max went red. Allison didn't often bring up. Sorry. I thought I heard something weird when I did a plosive in the microphone. In fact, for that matter, I think it might have been a little low. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can't see where the gain is. Okay, let's deal with that right now. Max went all red. Allie didn't often bring up the time when the sheep had butted him in the back and tossed him into the water trough. But when she did, it got to him. He prided himself on being really good with the sheep. But that one just didn't like him, and she made it known. When she could. Only 'cause I didn't want you to have to explain to your dad why you'd brought home a bunch of wool and mutton that night, he mumbled. Besides, she said, we don't have weapons. What are we going to do? Throw dirt at the skeletons? Max lifted his pickaxe. I didn't say we would fight the skeletons. I said we would get rid of them. And she started hacking away at the tree's branches. Allison realized with pride that she had done a good job making the pickaxe. It barely looked used. It would make a good headstone for their graves after trying to fight skeletons in lava, she thought grimly. Below them, sunlight started to peek through the holes in the foliage and fall onto the patrolling skeletons. Okay, so we've read 3 chapters of The Lost Journals. pretty good stuff overall. Where's a bookmark when you need it? Sorry. Sorry. And we're going to be taking a short break for a little bit. I'm going to, use the restroom or whatever. I'll be back. I'm so sorry. I realized that I muted the microphone. So as I was saying, okay, we're going to be reading Minecraft The End next. You know, a couple of chapters at least. And as you can imagine, this takes place in the end. So let's get this started. I'll remove the dust jacket so it won't get ruined. Minecraft: The End by Catherine M. Valenti. For Aurora and Cole, I am only ever a portal away. Once upon a time, there was a player. The player was you. Sometimes it thought itself human on the thin crust of a spinning globe of molten rock. The ball of molten rock circled a ball of blazing gas that was 330,000 times more massive than it. They were so far apart that light took 8 minutes to cross the gap. The light was information from a star, and it could burn your skin from 150 million kilometers away. Sometimes the player dreamed it was a miner on the surface. Sometimes the player dreamed it was a miner on the surface of a world that was flat and infinite. The sun was a square of white. The days were short. There was much to do, and death was just a temporary inconvenience. Julian Guff, Minecraft End Poem. Chapter 1. You and me and us and them. You and me and us and them. It is always night in the end. There is no sunrise. There is no sunset. There are no clocks ticking away. But that does not mean there is no such thing as time or light. Ring after ring of pale yellow islands glow in the darkness, floating in the endless night. Violet trees and violet towers twist up out of the earth and into the black sky and into the blank sky. Trees full of fruit, towers full of rooms. White crystal rods stand like candles at the corners of the tower roofs and balconies, shining through the shadows. Sprawling, ancient, quiet cities full of these towers glitter all along the archipelago, purple and yellow like everything else in this place. Beside them float great ships and tall masts. Below them yawns a black and bottomless void. It is a beautiful place, and it is not empty. The islands are full of Endermen, their long, slender black limbs moving over little yellow hills and little yellow valleys. Their narrow purple and pink eyes flash. Their thin black arms swing to the rhythm of a soft, whispering music, plotting their plots and scheming their schemes in the tall, twisted buildings older than even the idea of a clock. They watch everything. They say nothing. Shulkers hide in boxes nestled in ships and towers, little yellow-green slugs hiding from outsiders. Sometimes they peek out, but they snap their boxes safely shut again, like clams in their shells. The gentle thudding sound of their cubes opening and closing is the heartbeat of the end. And on the central and largest island, enormous obsidian towers surround a small pillar of gray stone ringed with torches. A brilliant lantern gleams from the top of A brilliant lantern gleams from the top of each tower, a flame in a silver cage, shooting beams of light down from the towers into the grass, across a little gray courtyard, and down to the sky. Above it all, something slowly circles, something huge, something with wings, something that never tires. Round and round it goes, and its purple eyes glow like furious fire. Finn! The word came zinging through the shade of... Finn! The word came zinging through the shade off the shore of one of the outer islands. A huge end city loomed over most of the land. A huge end city loomed over most of the land. Telos. Telos sprouted out of the island highlands like something alive. Great pagodas and pavilions everywhere. White shimmers fell from the glistening end rods. Shulkers clapped in their little boxes, leashed to Telos like a dog floated a grand purple ship, a pirate ship without an ocean to sail. Most of the end cities had ships attached to them. No one was certain why anymore. Any more than they're certain who built all those big, strange cities in the first place. Not the Endermen, though they were happy to name every place after themselves. Not the thing flying in endless circles around a gate to nowhere. Not the shulkers who never came out of hiding enough to learn anything about anything. The end ships just were, as the cities just were, as the end just was, like clouds or diamonds or Tuesdays. Finn, find anything good? A skinny young Enderman teleported quickly across the island, in and out of the nooks and crannies of Telos. He blinked off in one place and back on another until he stood on the deck of the end ship, holding something in his arms. His head was handsome, black and square. His eyes were bright and hungry. His limbs were slum but strong. An Enderman leaned against. Sorry, my nose is distracting me. His limbs were slim but long. An Enderman leaned against the mast, waiting for him. She crossed her arms across her thin chest. Nah, the Enderman thought loudly. The words just appeared in the Enderman's mind. Endermen had no need for mouths or ears. No need for sound. Telepathy was so much easier than talking. You just thought at somebody and they understood you. Nothing good, Mo. Just a bunch of pearls. We've got tons of those. Ugh, you take 'em. They give me the creeps. I was sure the chest plates we found last week would regen by now, but I guess somebody else got there first. I got some redstone ore. That's about it. You go next time. You always sniff out the good stuff. The twin 12-year-old Enderman, brother and sister, Finn and Mo, headed down into the guts of their ship. Finn was technically 3 minutes older, but he didn't make a big deal out of it. Things like who was older and who wasn't smacked of rankings, of structure, of order, and order wasn't welcome in the end. They'd always lived here. They couldn't remember any other place. They grew up here. It was their home. No different from any of the hundreds of Endermen you'd find on any island in the archipelago. They lived on an end ship crammed with junk they'd snatched up from where they could find it. Some of it was very good junk, diamonds and emeralds, gold ore and lapis lazuli. enchanted iron leggings, pickaxes of every kind, beetroot seeds and chorus fruits, saddles and horse armor, though they'd never seen a horse. Dozens of set of marvelous gray wings you could stick right on your back and fly around anywhere you liked. Some of it was just plain old actual junk. Rocks and clay sand, and old books were with broken pieces. Finn and Mo didn't care. They were scavengers, and scavengers weren't picky. You never knew when you could really use some good old-fashioned clay. The twin Endermen knew there were other worlds out there. It was only logical when you live in a place called the End. If there was an end, there had to be a beginning. Somewhere else for this place to be the end of. Somewhere the opposite of here. Green and bright, with blue skies and blue water. Full of sheep and pigs and bees and squid. Other Endermen went there all the time. They'd heard the stories, but this was their world. They were safe here, with their own things and their own kind. Finn and Mo's treasure piled up to the ceiling of the hold. The twins picked their way through their collection carefully. They had done it 1,000 times. There was a well-worn path through the boots and swords and helmets and dragon heads and ingots. Little spaces hollowed out for sitting and eating and living, and pets. Hiya, Grumpo, Mo thought cheerfully at the shulker in his box on the far wall. He'd always been there, just like them. They'd never been able to get rid of him, even though they really thought they could. They could have used his spot for more loot. If they whacked on his box until it fell apart, it just came back the next day. Eventually, they'd just given up and accepted him. Gave him a name, let him guard the junk ship some days. You never know when someone might try to raid your ship. When you had this much loot in one place, you had to stay sharp. Grumpo didn't really guard it so much as sat there hating everything, like he always did. But it made them feel safer. He wasn't just a shulker, he was their shulker. If it was him, they never wanted to pry. They respected the shulker's personal space. Hiya, Grumpo thought back. He peeked out of his box. They caught a glimpse of his yellow-green head. I hate you. Okay, shrugged Finn. Good boy. I'm not, snapped Grumpo. I want to bite you. Ah, are so, thought Mo. Who's a good boy? The shulker grumbled to himself and shut his box again. His last thought appeared in their heads. The letters very small and angry. I'm a bad boy. I'll bite you tomorrow. You'll see. Mo and Finn dug out a basket of chorus fruits from behind a couple of blocks of ore. They divided them equally for lunch. Everything between them was equal. Very carefully, very deliberately, almost militantly equal. The twins worked quietly and happily, side by side, and packed up their meal to take with them. Guard the ship, Grumpo, thought Finn and Mo. We're gonna go visit Ed. Don't let anyone take our stuff. I hate the ship, complained Grumpo, without opening his box. I hate you. I hate Ed. I hate all you. I hate your stuff. Good talk, Grumpo. They laughed inside their great black square heads. Finn and Mo teleported out onto the deck of the ship. Hang on, I gotta check something. Just bear with me a moment. I just found out that my Minecraft The Island review just got 237 views total. Now that's not much compared to most reviews out there, but I put a decent amount of work into it. Anyway, back to the Enderman. Oh yeah. The black sky looked so pretty, with the city sparkling nearby. But they weren't headed to the city. They blinked in and out of sight as they teleported across the island chain. Their ender pearls glowed hot with each jump. In a moment or two, they'd reached the central island. Crowds of endermen moved between the obsidian towers. Beams of light from the caged lanterns shot out into the dark. "Greetings, Hubbinet Pa," Finn thought to a tall, elderly enderman they often saw out here. "All hail the great chaos. May the great chaos smile upon you, juvenile male." Pa replied solemnly. It was the traditional answer. All endermen worshipped the great chaos. The universe was divided into chaos and order. Overworlders believed in order, but endermen knew it was a lie. Always and forever a lie. The biggest lie ever told. In the overworld, people believed you could build a fortress strong enough to keep anything out, that you could actually make something perfect, something that would last. Only endermen, servants of the great chaos, seemed to understand that this was folly. It was their holy duty to prove it. Life was so much better when you understood the truth. Anything could happen, any time, to anyone and anything. The great chaos came for everyone sooner or later. It would come for the whole universe someday. The Enderman's duty was to help it along any way they could. The holiest pilgrimage an Enderman could make was to journey to the overworld, witness the construction of the forces of order, and sabotage them. Remove one block from a cozy house, and the great chaos's work could begin. Rain or fire could fall through the roof. Creepers could sneak through the hole in the foundation. Thieves could crawl through and clean you out. Order was so boring. Wasn't life much more interesting once you let the chaos in? Yeah, to this day, I don't know why my nose gets itchy. Hang on. I think this might be better, actually. "Greetings, Hubbinet Lop," Mo thought to an Enderman who was surrounded by glowing purple sparks, staring out of the edge of the island. "All hail the great chaos." "Greetings, Mo," Lop replied. "I await the return of my Ender frags. They departed to the overworld to hunt order and destroy it. I am tremendously proud of my fragments. They will bring glory to our end." "I'm sure they'll be back soon," Mo thought comfortingly. The Enderman turned to stare down at them. She was so tall. Something strange flickered in her magenta eyes. "Are you alone? Are you weakened? Do you require end stack with a Hubbinet of superior strength and power?" Mo took a step back. Mature Enderman could get very cagey about a juvenile on her own, with no guardians around. It disturbed them somewhere deep. It disturbed them somewhere deep in their bones. And Mo didn't like the way the big Enderman thought. All stiff and formal and spiky. Long words, and too many of them. Kids didn't think like that. Finn and Mo didn't, and neither did any of the other young Endermen they'd met. Some enchantment must fall on you when you came of age that turned you into a snob. But of course, Lop thought this way was only because there were so many Endermen milling around and Ender Dragons around the Ender Dragon's island. Alone, an Enderman was angry, primitive, little better than a bear who's been hit on the head quite a lot. Only in groups did their thoughts grow all those long and interesting spikes. A group of Endermen was called an End. That was why their country was called the End. All the Endermen together, the biggest End there could be. Within an End, there were many different individuals, each in a different cycle of life. Ender frags were juveniles that fragmented off from a pair of mature hubbinets. Nubbinets were fully grown Endermen who had not yet replicated to start their own ends. Finally, there were the Cruxinets. Or wait, hold on. Wait, is it pronounced hub units? I just realized that. Hub unit Lop. Hub unit. Okay. Can't believe that I've been mispronouncing things. Yeah, that's a little better. Within an End, there are many different individuals, each in a different cycle of life. Ender frags were juveniles that fragmented off from a pair of mature hub units. Nub units were fully grown Endermen who had not yet replicated to start their own ends. Finally, there were the Crux units, the great ancient ancestors that had replicated alone and started their ends out of nothing but themselves. Coming together with other Endermen to smarten up and get things done was called end stacking. Of course, it was easiest with the units and fragments of your own end. They known you since before you were replicated, but Endermen could stack with any other Enderman and grow stronger, smarter, safer, and sneakier. That was what Lop was offering, safety. One brick isn't much, though it can hurt if it falls on you. But 100 altogether are a wall. Sorry. Something about the camera is off. I think I should go up a little bit. I wonder, can you, I accidentally banged the arm that holds this camera. Did the microphone pick it up? Hang on. Well, even if it does pick up the sound a little bit, it's not as noticeable as the shakiness when I touch it. Right, But Mo didn't want it. She had Finn. That was enough. It had always been enough. When she stacked with Endermen who were not Finn. And one other she was trying not to blink to think about just now, because it was so distracting to think about Khan and Mo. Mo had things to do today. It made her itch all over until she wanted to claw her skin off. It made her want to cry. It filled her so full of energy she could barely keep from running and jumping and somersaulting in circles like an idiot. Mo might have been smarter and stacking, but she never felt smarter, because she couldn't concentrate for all the itching and crying and somersaulting. Maybe that would go away in a few years when she became a nub unit. Mo and Finn were still ender frags, just barely. Or maybe Mo was just a mess. Definitely a possibility. No, I'm fine, Mo thought fiercely. Are you certain? Thought the huge Enderman with growing concern. I am available. I am an excellent hub unit. My teleportation and fighting abilities are unequaled. I'm fine, Mo shouted in her head and ran toward Finn. She did not look behind her. Oh, wait. And the Ender Dragon flew around and around and around, roaring as it went. It dipped and dove between the towers, coming to rest every so often on the small gray courtyard in the middle of the island. There it roared some more, then took off again. Finn and Mo teleported up to the top of one of the black pillars. They settled down on the dark stone beside the lantern and watched the Ender Dragon for a while. It was their favorite thing to do, no matter how long you watched ED. No matter how much you watched Ed, as they called the beast, the dragon never got any smaller or less scary or less interesting. All those nubbly scales along its spine, those amazing wings, those huge purple eyes. Every time it passed by, they shivered with excitement and fear, but mostly excitement. Do you ever go there? Do you ever want to go there? Mo asked, munching on her chorus fruit. Where? Finn tracked the Ender Dragon with his eyes. He wasn't really listening to his twin. Who could listen to a sibling when there was a dragon around? It was resting on the little stone courtyard, way down on the ground. The overworld. Ugh, why? There's humans there. Humans were the worst thing he knew about, worse than the void you could easily fall into, worse than grown-up Endermen, worse than thieves after your loot, way worse than Grumpo. Humans hated Endermen. They killed Endermen and stole their hearts. The Ender Pearls that every Enderman was born with, the jewels that gave them the power to teleport. Who did that? Who stole hearts? I don't know. Mo stretched her long, dark legs. Meet new people, destroy them, get more loot, something to eat that's not coarse fruit, serve the great chaos. Yeah, this is insanely interesting. I'm actually learning something here, like how the Endermen work, what their culture is like, their opinions on things. Hang on, just gotta stretch a little bit. Sorry. Mo, you know what happened to our hub units. They went to the overworld and never came back. If not for the overworld, we would still have an end. They got caught in the rain, They got caught in the rain. Mo remembered, a horrible memory. Rain was poison to their people. Standing in a summer storm was like standing beneath 1,000,000 silver bullets. It could happen to anyone. That's what the Great Chaos teaches. It gives and takes. It could happen to you or me or Grumpo. It could happen to Lop's Enderfrags. She stands there waiting for them every day. Have you ever seen Lop's fragments? No, Mo thought softly. Finn flicked a chorus fruit over the edge of the pillar. It floated down to the yellow earth. There you go. It does happen. It does happen to anyone. How many Endermen do we lose every week? May their noble sacrifice hasten the reign of the Great Chaos, Mo thought piously. Yeah. But guess who does the forces of order's dirty work? Humans. All our problems are because of humans. It's because of humans we can't even remember what our hub units look like. It's because of humans we can't just pop up to the overworld for a nice picnic whenever we feel like it. It's not worth it anyway. I promise, nothing up there is better than what we have here. The only good reason to visit the overworld is to serve the Great Chaos. And I wouldn't even do that unless I was sick of being alive. What could be more chaotic than refusing to serve anybody after all? Finn followed the purple spores floating around his skin with his eyes. That was how you could tell an Enderman was talking, even if you couldn't hear it. The little glittering violet lights of their telepathy at work flattered all around them. Is that what our hub units were doing? Serving? Sacrificing? I think so. I like to think so. That would mean us being orphans was something more than just a stupid mean joke the Great Chaos played on us for fun. Vengeance? Mo thought casually. We could hunt down humans all night long. It might be fun. Steal their hearts for a change. Mo, the overworld is dangerous. It takes people away. Why risk it? I guess you're right. Besides, we have everything we need right here. She squeezed his dark, thin hand. The lantern lights sparked everywhere. It was the most beautiful night the twins could imagine. Just like every night, Finn put his long, angular black arm around his twin and rubbed her square head affectionately. Oh, she thought, it's coming close this time. The Ender Dragon soared toward them, catching the light from each lantern and passed. Good afternoon, Ed. Good afternoon, Ed. Mo weaved shyly as the creature swooped down toward the pillar. They often tried to talk to it, though it was not tame. It rarely spoke back. But today something different happened. The Ender Dragon turned its boxy black head toward them. It opened its mouth. Its insides glowed violet. Hail to thee and mercy, Mo fragment. Its thought blazed and cracked over her head, bigger and louder than any Enderman's. Mo froze, a chorus of fruit halfway to her face. It knows my name. How does it know my name? You must be famous, thought Finn. Mo felt his jealousy sizzle in her head. The Ender Dragon banked and came round again. It screeched into the void. Hark, Fragment Finn. It knows my name too. Wow! The Ender Dragon The Ender Dragon turned sharply around a distant pillar. Hark! What kind of noise is that? Is it sick? Is it going to throw up? You got all that stuff about mercy. I got hark. Oh, it means hello. Mo giggled in the depths of her mind. Oh, hello, Ed. Hello. Hark. Maybe it'll be friends with us. Do you think, Mo? Mo wasn't so sure. It was coming straight for them now. The purple fire in its eyes didn't exactly look like it meant to make friends. This time, as the creature flew by, it dragged its dark wing over the top. This time, as the creature flew by, it dragged its dark wing over the top of their pillar, knocking them over like they weighed nothing at all. Now go away! Ed bellowed in their minds. The crystal lantern next to them guttered in fear. The dragon's tail snapped in the air like a whip, and it dove into the darkness. That was, Finn thought, so awesome! Mo finished for him. Their purple eyes glittered with glee. Mo grabbed a handful of the silver netting that surrounded the lantern. She could never resist a little more loot. Race you home, she thought happily, and vanished. Finn vanished after her. Sorry, I'm actually getting a little tired, surprisingly. Wonder what that's all about. But yeah, this was actually a very interesting read, this book, Minecraft The End. But I want to thank you all for joining me. Like, believe me, I want to read more, but again, for some reason I'm kind of tired, and I don't really know why. So, yeah, thank you all for joining me, and I don't think there will be a live stream next Saturday, because next Saturday is going to be LA Comic-Con, and I'm probably going to be spending most of, if not all my time there. It's at the LA Convention Center, so that should be fun, but I'll let you guys know ahead of time. Okay, so again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.